All right, today we're talking about something that honestly impacts every single one of us: road safety. It doesn't matter if you're behind the wheel, on a bike, or just walking down the street. What we're about to go over could, no joke, one day help you save a life. So let's just start with this number: 70 to 90%. Just let that sink in for a second. What do you think that is? Well, that's the percentage of all road accidents that are caused by one single thing: us, human error. And when you actually look at the breakdown of what causes these accidents, the picture gets even clearer. We might blame bad roads or a car malfunction, right? But those things, they account for just a tiny fraction of crashes. The overwhelming majority of the time, the root cause is a decision someone made. So, okay, a crash happens. What's the real cost? I mean, we see the dented metal, but that's not even half of it. The real impact. It's like a shockwave that spreads out and affects all of us. You can think about it in four big buckets. First, and most importantly, is the human cost: the tragedies, the suffering families, the lost potential. Then, of course, you've got the material costs: the cars, the guardrails, all of it. On top of that, you have the administrative costs for police, firefighters, all the emergency services. And finally, the medical bills: ambulances, hospitals, doctors. It's just a mountain of costs. So what's the bottom line here? It's simple, really. We all end up paying for these accidents. Every single one of us. Whether you're in the crash or 1,000 miles away, we all share that burden. Okay, so if the human factor is the biggest piece of this puzzle, let's zoom in on that. Who's actually the most at risk out there on the roads? When you look at the data, some really clear and kind of surprising patterns start to emerge. First up, and it might not be a huge shock, is young drivers. The statistics are pretty stark. Drivers between the ages of 15 and 29 are involved in the majority of fatal accidents. So the big question is, why? Well, it's basically a perfect storm of factors. You've got inexperience, right? A brain that's still developing its sense of risk. Then there's a higher tendency to speed or break rules, especially when friends are in the car. It all comes together to cause more accidents at the worst possible times: at night, on weekends, and way too often, alcohol or drugs get thrown into that mix. Now let's flip to the complete other end of the age spectrum: elderly drivers. The risks they face are totally different from young drivers, but they're every bit as significant. See, for older drivers, it's not really about risky behavior. It's more about their physical condition. As we all age, our faculties can decline a bit. Reaction times get slower, our field of vision might narrow, and there are often medications with side effects. All of this can make a really complicated intersection or a confusing traffic pattern feel, well, pretty overwhelming. So let's just put them side by side. For young drivers, the danger comes from behavior: feeling a little too confident, maybe taking risks. For elderly drivers, the danger comes from their condition: physical changes and maybe getting disoriented. Two completely different problems, right? But they both lead to the same result: being more vulnerable on the road. But hey, it's not just about who's behind the wheel. What about people on foot? When you look at pedestrians, especially in busy cities, two groups are tragically involved in accidents way more than anyone else: kids and the elderly. For kids, the world just looks different. They're shorter, so they can't see over parked cars, and they have this dangerous belief that if I can see the car, the driver must see me, which we all know isn't true. Plus, their hearing isn't fully developed to pinpoint where sounds are coming from. Then you have the elderly, who might struggle to judge how fast a car is actually going or get turned around in a really busy, noisy environment. All right, let's talk about folks on two wheels for a minute: cyclists and motorcyclists. They're in a tough spot out there on the road, and it makes them incredibly vulnerable. Think about it. They're way less stable, harder for drivers to see, and they have basically zero protection. A rider's body is the vehicle's chassis. That's why the injuries can be so devastating. But, and this is huge, there is one thing that changes the game. The data is absolutely clear. Wearing a helmet cuts your risk of a serious head injury by 3 times. 3! It is the single most effective thing a rider can do. Okay, so we get the risks. But now let's put you in the situation. Imagine it. You're driving, and a crash happens right in front of you. Your heart starts pounding, adrenaline kicks in. What do? What's the very first move you should make? This is where we switch from just knowing about the problem to knowing what to do about it. Because what you do in those first few moments, it can literally be the difference between life and death. First things first, you need to know about something called the duty to assist. In a lot of places, it is actually a crime to not help at an accident scene. Seriously. The only exceptions are if help is already there and organized, or if you'd be putting your own life at risk. So this isn't just about being a good person, it can be the law. So, to make sure people don't just freeze up in a panic, there's a really simple, easy to remember plan. It's often called the PHH protocol. It just stands for three simple words: protect, alert, and help. Let's walk through what each of those really means. Okay, step one, protect. And this starts with you. Your safety comes first. Get your reflective vest on. Then protect the scene itself. Get those warning triangles out to stop another car from piling into the wreck. And finally, protect the victims. And a huge part of that means do not move them unless the car is on fire or in some other immediate danger. Once that's done, step two, alert. This is simple. Call for help. Give the emergency services your exact location, how many people are hurt, and anything else they need to know. And that brings us to the final crucial step, help. This is where you step in and do what you can until the professionals get there. And look, just knowing a few basic do's and don'ts can make a world of difference. It's incredibly empowering. Okay, so let's make this super clear. Here are the big do's and don'ts. Do cover them up to keep them warm. Shock is a real danger. Do check if they're conscious and breathing. Do apply firm pressure to any bad bleeding. Now for the don'ts, and these are just as critical. Don't give them anything to drink. Absolutely do not try to take off a motorcyclist's helmet. You could cause a serious spinal injury. And again, unless the car is literally on fire, don't move an injured person. Here are just a couple of quick, specific things you might see. If someone seems like they're in shock, their pulse is really weak and fast, lay them down and raise their feet a bit. If you see bleeding from an ear or nose, don't plug it up. It could be a sign of a head injury, and blocking it could build up dangerous pressure on the brain. For burns, just cover them with something cool and clean, but never, ever try to pull off clothing that's stuck to the skin. So there you have it. We've talked about why crashes happen, what they really cost, who's most at risk, and, most importantly, what you can do if you're ever there when one happens. Knowing all this stuff is one thing. That's the first step. But the real question is, are you ready to take the next one? Because being prepared to step up and act, that's what really saves lives.